everybody's staying sane. The topic today is, will God scatter his people once more? That is today's topic. So stay tuned. I hope you stick around. It's an important topic. I believe that God is scattering us like he did in Genesis chapter 11. So I want to read some of Genesis chapter 11 to you guys. It's about the Tower of Babel, right? Everybody knows the story of the Tower of Babel, right? Hopefully you do. So let me go ahead and read. Genesis chapter 11, also known as the Tower of Babel. And the whole earth was one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from east to west, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And the people said to one another, let us make brick and stone and mortar. And they said, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto the heavens, and let us give it a name, and scatter abroad upon the face of the entire nation. But the Lord came down unto the city and the tower, which the children of men built, and did not know him. And this angered the Lord. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they all have one language, and thus they do not know me. So the Lord confounded their language, so that they may not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them abroad and hence upon the face of the earth, and they let off to build the city and to not know each other. Okay, and that's the end right there. Now, the question then becomes, why did the Lord scatter people's language? Right? Why did God scatter the people's language? It says in Genesis chapter 11 that at one time, the entire world was the same language. The people spoke the same language. And the Lord realized that the people did not know him. Okay, that is what I get out of this chapter. That the people did not know God, and it angered God. And so God decided to scatter the people. He decided it says in Genesis chapter 11, the Lord confounded their language. And he did this on purpose. He did this so the people would not know each other. Now, why did he do this? That's the question. Right? Why did God scatter the people's language? And how does this relate to the present moment, our present time? I believe that currently we are going and God is going to scatter the people again, like he did in Genesis chapter 11, if you read that story. Now, if later on, if you go through chapter 12, chapter 13, and chapter 14, Sodom and Gomorrah is the next chapter after the Tower of Babel. And then you have the story of Abraham, and you have the story of Lot, and then you have the story of Sarah, right? And so it's really interesting how these old texts relate to what is going on currently. You can compare what's happening in the West to both the Tower of Babel and to Sodom and Gomorrah. I believe we're scattering. We're scattering as a nation. God is changing our language. When you get in your car and you go to your job, it's getting harder to understand people. You don't know what people believe anymore. We have no common belief system anymore. A stranger walks into your business or a stranger walks into your gym, you don't know what he believes. And you don't know what they believe, right? And they certainly don't know what you believe, right? And so this is part of the plan. This is the scattering. Why is God doing this? Because the people do not know him, right? It says clearly in Genesis chapter 11, this angered the Lord. At one time, the nation was of one language and one belief system, but they did not know him. And this angered the Lord. It says it clearly in chapter 11. And so God scattered the people. It says he confounded their language so that they do not know each other. Because when they were all one language, God saw that they did not know him, right? And they were all at one time of one language and of one nation, but this angered the Lord, so he scattered their language. It says right there in Genesis chapter 11. And so, that's interesting. It's an interesting story of what is happening currently. Like I just said before, you go to the gym, you go to a place of business, you don't know, a stranger walks in. You don't know what he believes. They don't know what you believe, right? This is all like it was back then. So it's very interesting, the Tower of Babel story. Okay. Later on, now I have not prepared anything other than that, but I guess I can keep talking. Abraham and Lot talks about they went to Egypt. And I guess I'll prepare some more. I could talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. So there's Sodom and Gomorrah. That's an interesting story. Many of you probably don't know that story, right? But that is later on in Genesis chapter 18, Sodom and Gomorrah, um, in Sarah. Um, Now, Sarah, who was Sarah? Of course, Sarah, I believe, was Abraham's wife, one of many wives. But Sarah was, of course, the woman who could not have kids. She waited years, tried to get pregnant, and couldn't. Her. And so she believed for the longest time that perhaps uh, her God's plan, God had something different in store for Sarah, since Sarah could not bear children. So she did many good, because she did so much good, and because her faith was strong, she eventually did have children um, later on in her life, because God saw that she was faithful, even through struggle, even through suffering. Sarah stayed loyal. She stayed loyal to God, and she had faith into the very end. And when she was very old, she had finally gotten pregnant, and she bore a child. Now, I forget who that child was. I would have to read more, but honestly, I'll keep this video short, and I'll go ahead and because I don't have any more talking points written down other than the Tower of Babel. But um, in this video, the main question is the people, right? Um, God, God is seeing that uh, the nation is sinning, and the nation is going against God, and that they are all one language, and it's angering God. And you could say that we are being scattered again. We are being, it says in Genesis chapter 11 that God saw the people did not know him, and so God confounded the people's language so that they could not understand each other. And so you could say that that's happening again, and that we do go through cycles as humans, and the cycle that we are currently going through is a type of Tower of Babel, right? It's getting harder to understand each other, right? It's getting harder to find commonality between each other, right? Um, we are divided as a country, and as a nation. The nation is so knee deep in sin that it's angering the Lord. And just like it angered the Lord back then, I believe, is angering the Lord again. And so the question then becomes, is this happening again? Is God scattering the people? Is the Lord confounding their language so that the people do not know each other? They do not know their neighbor. They do not know their grocer. They do not know their doctor. They do not know their employer. They do not know their pastor. Um, It's very interesting. It's a very interesting idea. So, why, right? Why is always the question, and that is what, as people of faith, we should seek the truth. Understand that the world and what goes on in the world is demonic by nature, right? Hollywood, demonic. You see demonic images. The spirit is not there. Politics, demonic. They do not know him. They do demonic things. And I don't want to go too deep into it because I do have to watch that, and that is a very all those things that I just said really is a lot different than it used to be. Now, many people, especially the older people, will say, "Oh, it's always been like that," right? That's the argument that we get from the boomers, from the older generation. Oh, well, it's always been like that. No, it hasn't. It has not always been like that. When we were a prosperous nation, when we had intact families, when we had faith, we had trust, we had bonds, your voice could be heard. People didn't destroy their enemy. They had, even for their enemy, they had a certain respect for. They didn't try to outright destroy the people that they disagreed with. There's a famous saying from the 50s and the 60s. I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it. That was a very liberal argument. After the war in the 50s and the 60s, that was a very popular saying in the liberal political arena. Was I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it, because there was a time where you couldn't say that. You couldn't speak your mind. You lived in fear of what you might say. You were, and that was what really separated the freer countries from the less free countries, was freedom of speech. And that, I think, is gone away. It certainly has gone away in Europe. In fact, they want to introduce and restrict people's right to even go to the pub, to even go to the grocery store. Nevertheless, restrict your movement to go across state lines. They want to restrict your movement to even go to the store. So the question is, why is God scattering the people? Or is God scattering the people? Again, like the Tower of Babel. That's the question. I don't want to get too far into politics and all that, so we'll go ahead and leave it there. Let me know in the comments section, what do you think of Genesis chapter 11? Is God scattering the people so they do not know each other? Let me know in the comment section. Thanks, guys.